Welcome everyone. Thanks Stu for the introduction. Let's see how I can meet all the expectations and requirements for today's meeting. I'm really happy to talk about the best practices for change management in Jira Cloud for the enterprise. Let me check if that works. Yes. As Stu mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders, the CMO and senior consultant here at Jodocus. I'm the Atlassian business for over 13 years now, working in different roles and different departments. On the one side, using the Atlassian tools, and the other one like being an internal consultant, business analyst, so on and so forth. 5 years, I'm now in the professional service business, consulting the Atlassian tools mainly. I'm also one of the Atlassian community leads. Maybe some advertisement here real quick. Atlassian Communities, great event. We had Vish some months ago here in Hamburg. It's a great platform for customers to exchange ideas, talk about different things. So just go to ace.atlassian.com where you find your local Atlassian community. And yeah, I'm focused mainly on IT service management projects, and that's why where I do most of my consulting stuff. I want to briefly touch who is Jodocus. Jodocus was founded in 2019 as what we call Cloud First Solution Partner. Back then, in April 2019, the cloud was not that great, but we really believe that the Atlassian cloud will become really, really powerful as it is today and will become in the future even more. We're roughly now around 51 employees. I don't have the official numbers. That's why there's the tilde. We have roughly 30 partners, Revise being one of them. Really important for us to have that partner network and the domain-specific knowledge and the contacts. Having such great webinars like today. Although we are a 100% remote company, we do have offices in Hamburg, Düsseldorf, and Kulmbach here in Germany. Now, change management. Let's talk about it. As technology evolves and market adapts and business grow, IT infrastructures must evolve and meet new demands. But making necessary changes to internal business systems can be difficult, risky, and time-consuming. More importantly, these IT changes can directly impact the work and productivity of employees who rely on business technology. And it doesn't matter if that change is a new office printer or the implementation of an entire new technology or process across the enterprise. Either way, proper documentation, approval, and implementation are critical. Imagine a routine task, such as applying a scheduled antivirus update, something maybe outside of the Jira Cloud environment first, and then we go deeper into that topic. So this necessary maintenance is usually very simple and straightforward, but while the security patch are being applied, internal and maybe customer-facing systems may be down or experiencing other problems. And as a result, the company is faced with a difficult decision: accept regular disruptions during system updates or risk the serious consequence of not updating security tools. So to remain competitive, IT teams must be able to provide stable, reliable, consistent service. And at the same time, they must help business adapt to new requirements through regular service updates. Unfortunately, these two goals are often at odds. Stability and reliability require consistency, while service updates, by the nature, require change. Some example, I used to work for a really big enterprise here in Germany. It was really impressive. I used to work there as a developer for Groovy and Python scripts. And that business, they did everything in Jira, from the business idea to production. everything in Jira. So from working out the business idea, getting development teams and marketing, sales involved, to IT architects, security, compliance, legal, over to budgeting processes, everything was in Jira. Sure, there were integrations into budgeting systems, accounting systems like SAP, but everything was in Jira. And as a developer, I had my local Jira instance deployed on my virtual machine where I could develop. And then we had the 3 staging instance, right? Test environment, a development environment, a test environment, and then the prod environment. And that was quite impressive. A more common use case we see nowadays is the topic of IT asset management, where customers track all their business assets in Jira Assets. And not only those who have an IP address, but also the ones which doesn't, right? Like the chair I'm sitting on, the table I'm working with, the elevator, the fire extinguisher, everything that has a label attached where you have regulatory or checkups, let's say. Everything is in Jira Assets. And it starts with procurement, where you, let's say, order a new laptop for a new onboarding. You track the progress, you do the inventory, you do the asset accounting, and the whole asset lifecycle management. And with that, hundreds of automations are involved. And I found this picture yesterday on LinkedIn. When one of those automations or even import jobs of assets fail, it could look like this, right? So one little automation can screw up your whole process, and you might want to test that before you go live. So change is an inevitable part of any organization's journey to growth. But what is change management? According to ISO 4, the purpose of change management practice is to maximize the number of successful service and product changes by ensuring that risk and properly assessed, changes are approved, and the change calendar is managed. I have to mention that in ISO 4, change management was renamed to change enablement. Since everyone is talking about change management, I will stick to that. But really important in ISO 4 is change enablement. And with that, a lot of differences are introduced as well, which are really great and way more agile than before. ISO 20001 says change management is a structured approach to managing transitions and transformation within organization. In the context of information security, change management is the process of making changes to a company's IT system with the objective to minimize error and disruptions. Now, with ISO 20001 being a compliance certification, so to speak, there are way more out there that you might be familiar with. And some of them, Atlassian will hold some of them and also revise. And maybe in your industry, you have one of those compliance regulatory stuff as well. So for example, ISO 20001 is the international standard for information security. And that includes specific requirements for change management. It requires organizations to implement procedures for managing changes to the information security infrastructure. And this includes documenting, evaluating, and approving changes to ensure that security risks are controlled and minimized. FedRAMP, for example, is the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. It's an US standard focused on the security of cloud products and services. And it includes change management requirements. So it requires cloud service providers like Atlassian, for example, to establish change management processes to ensure the security and integrity of their service. Then we do have HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Although HIPAA is primarily focused on protecting health information, it indirectly includes aspects of change management. Healthcare organizations in the US, and also in Germany and in Europe and everywhere else, but it's a US certification, they must ensure that changes to their information systems do not negatively impact the security and confidentiality of patient information. And there are way more. From my past, let's say, I worked in the finance industry for the first 4.5 years of my professional business, and I faced the PCI DSS standard, which is the payment card industry data security standard, and that's critical for organizations that conducts and process credit card transactions, for example. So, but what is the change? So that's the last thing I'd like to mention before we start with the best practices. Adding, modifying, or removing an item that could have a direct or indirect impact on a service is a change. And in ITIL, we have 3 different change types, let's say. And the first one is a normal change, like something that has never done before, whether it's a connection between 2 systems and you need to connect them via a firewall hole, let's say. So you need to really require an evaluation and approval. You need to plan something. And these changes typically go through a formal approval process, including the impact assessment, the risk analysis, and the detailed planning. Then we have standard changes, and they are pre-approved. Sometimes normal changes can become a standard change. So these standard changes allow us to frequently do that change. And the last thing is the emergency change. Imagine you're in the middle of an incident, maybe a major incident. Your system stopped. You obviously don't want to go through a normal change where you do the impact assessment, the risk analysis, and the planning, and then there is this weekly CUP meeting where you have to go through. No, you want to fix the service or the instance immediately, and then afterwards, ITIL has the great and wonderful problem management process where you not only go into the root cause analysis, but also take a look at what changes you did during the incident, and yeah, either you accept the risk or you work on that, which then is a change again. Best practices for Jira Cloud. Now that the groundwork has been laid, let's talk about change management. And we start with the first one, which is never touch a production instance. Performing changes in a staging environment first significantly reduces the risk of introducing errors or issues to the production environment. It allows for the identification and resolution of potential problems before they even can impact the live system and end users. A staging environment, being a replica of the production environment, provides a realistic platform for testing. And this ensures that changes are tested under conditions that closely mimic the actual operating environment, leading to more reliable test results. By testing changes in a staging environment, the likelihood of causing unplanned downtime in the production environment is greatly reduced. And this approach helps maintain service availability and business continuity. Demonstrating that changes have been thoroughly tested and validated in the staging environment builds confidence among stakeholders, including management, clients, and users. It assures them that changes are unlikely to cause disruption or issues during the deployment to production. The staging environment allows for an iterative approach to change implementation, where feedback can be incorporated and improvements made before final deployment. So imagine you get this requirement from the business. You might think, we can tweak it here and there. You build it on the staging environment, you show it to your customer, you iterate on that, and you probably will deploy something that is way more usable and flexible and for the user, right? So this iterative process ensures higher quality and more effective implementation of change. The second one is processes and service catalog in place. Establishing a structured process for managing changes ensures consistency, predictability, and control in how changes are handled. It includes clear steps for change initiation, the assessment, approval, implementation, and review. When you design your processes, design your tools, your interactions, so that everything is focused on the users and how they experience the service. Every form that you design, that your users have to interact with, every step in the process where you interact with your user has got to be designed with user experience in mind. Having these super long change management forms in your platform will just stop them from creating changes. And a good idea is to engage your customers and users to help you design the processes you have. A service catalog provides a detailed list of IT services, including their descriptions, dependencies, and processes. It serves as a reference point for understanding how changes might impact various services and stakeholders. A service catalog and defined processes also improve communication by providing clear and consistent information to all involved parties. This clearly helps in setting the right expectation and reduces misunderstandings. Understanding the scope and requirements of services through the service catalog allows for more efficient allocation of resources during this change implementation. It aids in planning and ensures that necessary resources are available for the change. And defining processes and service catalog help in maintaining governance standards and compliance with internal policies and external regulations. So they provide a framework, let's say, for auditing and assessing the effectiveness of change management activities. Third best practice is understand the need for change. Recognize and clearly define the reason behind the need for change. This understanding helps in aligning the change with specific business goals or challenges. Engage with stakeholders to gather insights and perspective on the need for change. And this includes employees, management, customers, and other relevant parties. Analyze how the change will impact different stakeholder groups and what their specific needs and concerns might be. Conduct an assessment to understand the current state of the organization or system or process and compare it with the desired future that the change aims to achieve. This comparison helps in identifying the gaps and requirements that the change needs to address. On a side note, never do a change because there's a request for change. In Jira especially, over the last 13 years, I figured out that you are the expert. Okay, you're not only the Jira administrator, you're probably a business analyst or an in-house consultant for specific business processes. So really think about what they're trying to achieve. Try to analyze the current state and the desired state they would like to go for. Clearly articulate the benefits that the change is expected to bring to the organization. And this could include improved efficiency, cost savings, enhanced customer satisfaction, or staying competitive. Understand and communicate these benefits is crucial for gaining support and buy-in for the change. Evaluate the risk associated with the change, including potential resistance, implementing challenges, and unintended consequences. Develop strategies to mitigate these risks, ensure that the change can be implemented smoothly and successfully. Prioritizing change requirements is a critical aspect of effective change management. Here are my top 5. So, evaluate the potential impact of each change on the business, including the benefits and risks. Determine the urgency of a change, considering factors like deadlines, regulatory compliances, and critical system updates. Prioritize changes that align closely with organizations' strategic goals and objectives. Focus on changes that drive the business growth, improve customer satisfaction, or enhance competitive advantages. Gather input from key stakeholders or key users, including business leaders, IT staff, end users, to understand their needs and perspective. And prioritize those changes that have strong support from stakeholders, ensuring smoother implementation and adoption. Also consider the availability of resources, including personnel, budget, and technology. Changes during wintertime or Christmas time is probably not that great of an idea. So prioritize the change that can be realistically implemented with the available resource while postponing or adjusting requirements that exceed current capabilities. Conduct a thorough risk assessment for each change to identify potential issues and challenges. Give higher priority to changes with, let's say, manageable risks, or where effective mitigation strategies can be put in place. Quality assurance
Jan, sorry, I'm going to dive in just because we've got a little bit of chat going on, and I thought I'd give your voice a little bit of a break midway through these slides. I know what it's like, my friend. So I've got a couple of questions to just break in the middle here, and one of the things I've noticed coming up again and again in your presentation is the word stakeholder. And of course, stakeholders are all of these other people within your organization who either rely upon the tools or make decisions around you, support your decisions, advocate for you as the admin. You also raised the point that a lot of Jira admins out there have 5, 6 different hats that they might wear within their job. There's a common thing that I keep hearing, which is no one put their hand up to be the admin. They got put into that role. And so with that in mind, for the admins out there, I'm curious of 2 things. Number one, when's the best? Let's say you're in an organization and there isn't a lot of, you've identified as the admin that you've got change management challenges and that you don't have a lot of process. The things that Jan's talking about today are clearly not stringent program and processes that are being used within your organization. How do you go about starting that conversation? Where do you go to start pushing your organization into a best practice model?
Well, ideally, you can start within your own team, starting to talk about what you could improve in your department. It's always a good idea to start with yourself and think about what can you improve in your team, in your communication, the way you approach your stakeholders. We have one more best practice, spoiler alert, which is communication and training. So it's the way you communicate to the outside world, let's say, and how you introduce your stakeholders in the whole process. Is your team a black box? So like, I'm your stakeholder and I give you a requirement and you just do it? Or is there a feedback loop? Is there a meeting? Is there a a recurring process of you asking me for feedback if that what I've implemented is okay or not? So that it would be quality assurance and user acceptance testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a good starting point to really understand what you can do in order to serve your users. It's really that focus to think about what can you do, what would you do when you are my user, right? So just try to be a little bit empathetic, show some empathy, let's say, and think about how the process looks like from the outside world.
Great. And my second question, in our little mini break here, if we roll back to the conversation around all of the different regulatory compliance angles or things that your organization may have to adhere to. How I know that I've encountered this within our customer database. I've heard war stories where people didn't realize that the compliance badge that was at the front of their customer's website applied to the Jira instance because it was part of the customer, the key things that customers were doing, such as tech support or even if it was to do with software development. They didn't realize that Jira was a crucial part of their technology stack that absolutely fell under that the rigors of the compliance protocols that the organization at an executive level had signed up to, such as SOC 2. Do you find that that happens out there when you guys are consulting to people, that sometimes Jira slips through the gaps?
Yes. Most of the time, Jira is from a compliance and regulatory approach, Jira is most of the time not a critical system since it holds no customer data, let's say. So when something breaks down, when Jira breaks down, the business can continue, let's say. So the payment platform still works, the online shop is still working, right? But what they forget is that the whole business is working in Jira, and the whole change management, incident, problem management process is within Jira. And that's crucial for. I had 3 or 4 PCI DSS audits, so they are deeply interested in what is going on in tools like Jira and Confluence to really understand how you approach changes.
Got it. Great. Look, we've covered off never touching a change in production, processes and service catalog in place, understanding the need for change, prioritizing change requirement. Before we dive into a question break, let's get back onto quality assurance and UAT.
All right. Yeah, so both of them are crucial stages in the change management process, ensuring that changes meet the required standards and fulfill users' needs. We had that just a second ago. So develop a detailed test plan, let's say, that covers all aspects of the change, including functional, usability testing, and security. Ensure that the plan aligns with the objectives of the change and the expectations of the end user. It is a good idea, for example, to, when we stay in Jira, that users can or should write a change in form of a user story, let's say, with acceptance criteria. And you go back to them, you understand the change, you ask them what they mean probably, you have some recommendations, and then your acceptance criteria in the end could be the stuff you would like to test. And actively involve end users in the UAT process to ensure that the changes meet their needs and expectations. Gather feedback from a diverse group of users to get a comprehensive understanding of how the change will impact or will perform in the real world scenarios. Not only talk to those who requested the change, but go into the team or the teams and ask them as well. We had that, set up testing and sandbox environments that closely mirrors the production environment to ensure accurate test results. And use real data from your Jira Cloud productive environment to make sure that the sandbox has the latest issues in place. So people feel more at home, probably. So they know where they are, right? So it doesn't look like a test instance that much. Implement an iterative testing approach, allowing for continuous feedback and improvement throughout the Q&A and UAT phases. Address issues and concerns raised during the test promptly and retest to ensure that all problems are resolved. Thoroughly document the testing process, including test cases, results, issues found, and actions taken. Provide a clear and comprehensive report to stakeholders outlining the outcomes of the Q&A and UAT process and any recommendations for further improvements. So it might be the case that you will find out that everything is fine, you meet their requirements, all the acceptance criteria are ticked off, but maybe there are some improvements you found out during the quality assurance and UAT phase, which then will initiate another change request, for example. I think you've seen that before. Stu posted that on LinkedIn. Back up before you do anything. So when dealing with production environments, having a robust backup strategy is crucial. Backing up data and systems before implementing change is a key risk management strategy. It ensures that in case of any failure or unexpected issue, the original state can be restored, minimizing potential damage or data loss. A comprehensive backup allows for reversibility of change. If change leads to unforeseen negative consequences, having a backup means you can revert to the previous state most of the time, maintaining business continuity and business availability. And knowing that a reliable backup is in place gives the change management team, it's a way better word than Jira administrator team, right? Or application support, change management team. It gives them the confidence to implement changes. And it reduces the fear of irreversible errors and encourage a more dynamic approach to system improvements. Many regulatory frameworks, by the way, require that changes in systems, especially those holding sensitive data, are tracked and reversible. Backups serve as a part of this compliance requirement, providing an audit trail for changes. And backups provide assurance to stakeholders, including management users, that their data and services are protected. This insurance is crucial for maintaining trust, not only in you as a team, but also in the application and the platform you work with, and especially when implementing significant changes. Effective change execution is a critical phase in the change management process, ensuring that planned changes are implemented smoothly and achieve their intended outcomes. So develop a comprehensive implementation plan that outlines the steps, the timelines, resources, and personnel involved in the change. Ensure that the plan is clear, realistic, and aligns with the overall objectives and of the change. From an organization point of view, you could use that as well for those. Going to the cloud is a really long process. And we do have migration handbooks, for example, where we track all those steps, all the plans and timelines and resources we need to go to cloud. So that is a bigger change. And that's also good to have for when you do changes from sandbox to the production environment. Maintain open and continuous communication with all stakeholders throughout the change execution process. Keep stakeholders informed about the progress, address their concerns, and involve them as appropriate to ensure the buy-in and support. Coordinate effectively across different teams and departments to ensure that all aspects of the change are aligned and integrated. Foster collaboration among team members and facilitate knowledge sharing and problem solving. Now, we had that before, but even during the change execution, continuously monitor the progress of the change implementation against the plan. Implement control measures to quickly address any deviations or issue that arise, minimizing disruptions and keeping the change on track. And conduct a thorough testing and quality assurance checks at various stages of the implementation. Ensure that the change meets the required standards and specifications before full deployment. And last but not least, we touched on that briefly. Effective communication and training are, in my opinion, a pivotal element in the success of change management initiatives. Insufficient communication is the leading problem when it comes to moving employees through change. Organizations that practice transparency and provide information before, during, and after the change process will have a more accepting workforce. Although change in general is always a bit problematic. A communication plan should be developed, including different forms of communication taking place at different times. Maintain consistency in the information disseminated to avoid confusion and disinformation. Be transparent about the reason for change, its benefits, its potential risks or impact, including challenges that may arise. Utilize a mix of communication methods. We touched on that. Meetings, emails, workshops, social media, intranet blog posts to reach a wider audience. Introduce organizations communication, like HR, for example. It's also a good place to get them involved. Encourage two-way communication, allowing stakeholders to ask questions or provide feedback and feel heard. Design and implement training programs that are tailored to the needs of different user groups affected by the change. Include practical hands-on training sessions to help users gain confidence and competence in new systems or processes. And that starts with the onboarding of new employees, right? So get into the HR process where you learn to use tools like Jira and Confluence. And people can practice and have a hands-on training how to use that system. That's a good thing. Provide continuous support and resources post-training to assist stakeholders in adapting to the change. Use in reinforcement strategies such as follow-up sessions, refresher courses, and recognition of successful adaptation to consolidate change. Now, you might feel that not exactly everything matches your current situation. That's good. These examples are intended to show you what is possible and give you an idea of what you can and should consider. And there's a great quote. I don't know who said that, but start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. That's a good starting point for introducing change management to your organization. And with that, I hand over to Stu.
Thank you, Jan. Look, I get the general feeling, I mean, this is a best practice webinar, right? So we're talking about what is the absolute best practice that an organization of any size can follow. My first question for you, Jan, is out of all of the things you've talked about, what is the one or couple, what comes up time and time again where people are falling down? What's the area that's most missing? And we've got
back up
Jan
before you do anything.
Saying that the organization is in the dark age, in the Stone Age processes. So it looks like he's failing on a few of them.
So it really depends on what is available in the specific tool set, let's say. So for Jira Cloud, one thing that obviously has been missing for years now was the availability of configuration management, change management tool to bring changes from a staging environment to a production environment, right? So everything customers do right now is more or less on the production instance, even when they are live. I had a meeting yesterday, 2 hours, and it was scary because it was like, maybe we can add an automation here and do this and that with this and that assets. And I'm pretty sure and pretty confident that this will work. And that drives me nuts, right? So that's the first thing. So, and the second thing is backup before you do anything. We had Vish here in Hamburg talking about the shared responsibility model and why backup is so crucial, even in cloud. I think that is really important to have that in place and to give confidence to the change management team that whatever they do, it's reversible, that there is a backup, right? That you can go back and nothing can, still things can go wrong, but there's a confidence and also from a stakeholder perspective, right? And then it also depends on how big the organization is. Most of the time they have already change management in place. For those who don't, this process of understand the change, define the change scope, and prioritizing this communication with the customer. So you get this change request and you really need to talk to them, understand what they're trying to achieve. That's a crucial thing. But that adds a lot of value, not only to the change you want to deploy, but also to how you are recognized in the organization. So now there's this Jira team that is interested in my business processes. They really want to understand what I'm trying to achieve, and they can help me, or maybe they have best practices to do something to integrate my system, like my Salesforce with Jira, for example. And that gives a good standing within the organization.
I like that. So yeah, I think you're dead right. You if the Jira admin or whatever your job title happens to be, kind of lifts up the processes within the organization, that has a tendency to have a ripple effect within the other areas of the organization, and people start adhering to the practice. So I'm going to give Vish a question because you raised a really valid point. Vish, it's your favorite topic. I think it's a really crucial topic with 15 February looming. Tell us briefly about the shared responsibility model for Jira Cloud.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of misconception out there when it comes to being in the cloud. A lot of people think, if you're going into the cloud, then hey, I don't have to deal with a on-premises server. I don't have to deal with the software, managing the patches, updates, whatnot. So now I'm in the cloud. It's whoever is the vendor, Salesforce, Office 365, Microsoft, Atlassian. There are so many SaaS applications out there. It is the vendor's responsibility. Now, what they don't realize is, again, as Jan pointed out, I think maybe we should share an example which happened quite recently. I had a customer of ours of Revise, call me late in the evening. He was quite panicked, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me recover some information back?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. It's it's pretty easy to do it, but since you called me, let's get on a Zoom call. Let's see what's going on." And I asked him what happened. Did you delete something? He says, "No, I didn't delete anything. I just I was making some changes." Again, this goes back to, I think, a comment which is made in the chat where this person was operating in the Stone Age in production. So he was making changes right in the production environment. And in Jira, as I think everybody knows out here in the audience, if you're changing things, if you're even changing a name of a status, that has a ripple effect across the board, because that status is used in your JQL queries. It's got a lot of impact, which we can't, we typically won't think of. So this person, made a change to a workflow which entailed adding in a new status and changing the name of a status which existed. And lo and behold, all of his workflows, that status changed because it's a shared object. And and none of his boards, all his queries, everything is now messed up because they're looking for that older name. Again, very simple change. And what ended up happening was the picture which Jan showed earlier, with all the pizzas, coming and crashing. That's essentially what happened for this business. Things just came to a crashing stop. One small change. Now, he thought he had done something. He had deleted something, whatnot. In this case, again, this is the responsibility of the operator of how they're managing their configuration, their data, right? So this is where, just tying it back to the shared responsibility part. Even if you're in the SaaS world, it is not, everything is not, given that we're talking about Atlassian and Jira, it's not Atlassian's responsibility that you go do something, by accident, or you press the wrong key. You made the wrong status change, renamed it. That is not Atlassian's responsibility. That is you as the operator or the customer who's using the product. It is your responsibility.
And
so
maybe,
I think it's a.
Sorry, maybe to add to that, there is a backup in place from Atlassian, right? This one-time backup you can do every, I don't know if it's now 24 hours or 48 hours. There is a backup, but when you do something wrong, you don't want to revert to that backup, right? Restoring everything back to that point. Imagine all your business teams go back 48 hours. I remember the scene from Forrest Gump where it just runs. So that would be the case for those who have to restore the backup. So what you would like to have in place is this point in time recovery possibility to go back and restore the specific things you've changed or that might gone wrong, right? So
yeah, 100% agree with you. Except in the case, again, I'm just kidding out here, but I gotta say this because our friend Stu actually lives ahead in the future. He's
That's right.
almost a day ahead. So for him it doesn't matter whatever changes we do. But no, but coming back to the point you're making, Jan, 100%. But I think there's one more thing which I would want to point out. Leaving the backup part aside, when you make changes, and especially with configuration, at the end of the day, we're all human. We make mistakes. Sure. We are operating in the production environment, or you have a good setup. You have a sandbox, a test, and a production environment. You still need to know. You need to be able to investigate. If something goes wrong, you need to have a way to go look back. What happened? Typically everything was working well yesterday. And suddenly something went wrong. So I think the first step is, obviously, you need to have controls in place. All the things which you talked about, the processes involving the stakeholders, documenting the changes, all the best practices. But of course, things do go wrong sometimes. Scenarios which you're not thought of. So in those type of situations, how do you go and investigate? I think, how do you understand what went wrong? What is the scope of that? What is the blast radius of that? Then comes in the recovery plan, right? So I think that's something which the person who's been named as the Jira administrator or the Atlassian administrator has to sort of think through in saying, okay, how do I manage this? And by the way, this is true in the case of on-premises. It's true in the case of, or more so in the case of cloud.
Thanks, Vish. Look, I think, once upon a time in my career, back before we had the two in the centuries that we were in at the start, so back in the 1990 somethings, I had a title which was I was an auditor, IT auditor, and so we used to go through a bank and we would go through all of this sort of stuff. We'd be evaluating their protocols and things. And the reality was, and Jan raised this, that best practice is actually not about ticking every single box on the ITIL list. It's not about ticking every single box of the processes that Jan explained. It's about finding what's best for your organization in terms of your available resources, your available time, your capability, and writing that plan down. And one thing that we used to do when we were looking at organizations who said, here's our plan, here's what we're going to do, we would ask two questions, right? One, how is all of this being logged as you're executing this plan? Where are the records that are proving that this thing, this idea, this theory that you had of this change management protocol is actually being adhered to? Because without that logging, nothing, as far as compliance concerned, nothing happened. That was number one. Number two was, sure, you've got a risk mitigation plan. Great. How long is your backup restore going to take? Have you tested it? And so many organizations say, yeah, sure, we've got backups. We've got the script that does X and Y, and we know that we can restore it by going, Y and X. Or we've got this backup app where we can do a full restore or a granular restore, or God forbid, restore back to 47 hours ago and just blitz all of the tickets and projects that are in Jira. But so many organizations don't know that there's actually a burn time in that restore process for a lot of people, right? It's not like you turn it on and it goes. There's where is the backup data? What's the order in which it needs to be restored back in a safe way? How do we then evaluate that data that's been restored to make sure that it hasn't had even made more of damage to our business? So I've seen those things happen quite a lot in my career as well. So I just wanted to highlight that kind of best practices, the best practice for your organization. And what I would say to our audience and people who are watching the recording of this, if you're unsure, then that's why solution partners exist within the Jira world, within the Atlassian world. These guys work with hundreds and hundreds of organizations around the world with all sorts of scenarios. So if you're unsure what best practice means for you, then talk to a solution partner, talk to an organization like Jodocus, and an expert like Jan and his team, and find out, let them give you some advice around what's a realistic approach for your particular scenario, because you might have a variety of systems, or you might be doing it right, but you might just need that validation or that external set of eyes to look over it. We've got a little bit more time, and I've got a couple of extra questions here. Audience has gone quiet, but they're still hanging around. So any questions out there, you've got a few minutes, team, to pop some questions through. One of the questions I had, because again, I've been in this Jira world for not so long. I've been in tech for a long time. But Jan, we're talking about environments, sandbox, staging, test, production, pre-test, pre-production. Is there you have organizations that might have 10,000 Jira users. You've got organizations that might have 40 Jira users. You've got organizations where Jira or Confluence, whatever tools we're talking about, mission critical, and you've got others where it's just playing a supporting role within the organization. So there's this matrix of use case and scope and size. How do you advise an organization as to how, do they just need to do sandbox in production, or do they need to have a pre-production? What sort of methodology do you apply, or questions do you ask when people are saying, how should I lay out my environments or my sites?
So in general, when we start with implementing, let's say Jira from the ground up, it's you can start on one instance, right? So there's no need for deployment, except you start with the implementation phase or testing phase. Then everything you want to do is on the test environment, right? And then obviously once you're live, once the first team is live, everything you do is on a sandbox environment, ideally. We've seen some intermediate variations. So you have a staging instance, but then you have also test projects on the production instance where you test out things because it's closer to what you have. And because of the absence of any change management and configuration tool, that was a good thing. So you can implement everything on production, and then you apply those changes to the production projects. I think the big issues we have is we have such a huge flexibility in Jira Cloud, for example, with all the automations, right? And the more you get used to it, the more you will use it. And we have customers where we have hundreds of automations that will start running once an issue is created. And even we have timeline plans because we wait for specific automations to run so that we can make sure that others have run, right? And doing a little bit of that, when we go back to the pizza picture I've just showed you, that's actually the case, right? So just changing one thing, even in a test project on a production instance, can screw up the whole process. And when you even work with assets, right, you have your whole IT asset management and asset lifecycle management in place, then you have to go to the asset management, you have to set here and there field, you have to update that manually, and that's not good. So try to do everything on a sandbox environment.
Great.
Yeah, I think maybe one small thing to just maybe add in is with regards to automations. Automations, as I know customers go through and consulting companies like Jodocus, they painstakingly go and time things, set it up to work correctly. And when somebody goes and changes something without knowing what the implication of that is, it could cause a mess. And investigating that is a huge is not an easy thing to find out where things went wrong out there. So yeah, I've seen that. I think I saw that recently with another customer where or they had made some changes to their automation rules, but they could not figure out. They spent a lot of time, I think, a lot of downtime in trying to just investigate what happened, especially when you have multiple people working in the same environment. So you don't know who did the change.
We do have a customer, I think it was this week, who uses PyTest. That's a Python testing framework to test some of their automations and issue creation, stuff like that. And they just renamed a transition because it was more readable for the end users. And everything crashed because they specifically named the transition in an automation. And so the required state was not there, but good for them. They had a test management set up in place on a sandbox environment. So they knew everything before they deployed the changes manually. They have then a test plan or execution plan of what they need to do. But yeah, they found out that it's also a good idea to maybe rename the transition in automation. So,
do you have any resources, Jan, that you use for clients, such as test plans or white papers or any guides or checklists that I can persuade you to give away in an email that we send to our registrants?
I have to check, but probably not.
I guess a lot of what you do is very customized to the client, and in some cases proprietary.
Yeah.
Well, I was really asking the question because it segues into that we will be sending through. We've written a best practices guide to change management ebook, which we have sort of scoured the Atlassian ecosystem with to get experts to comment in on that. We'll be sending that out to everyone who's registered to this webinar, which is a great set of tools. We'll be talking a little bit in that email also about some of the tools that Revise make to help the change management or the change process within Jira specifically, and some of the stuff that we've got coming down the pike. I won't talk about it now because we're not here to pitch. Vish, any other questions for Jan while we have this expert on camera?
I think the one last thing which maybe I should just ask Jan, based on all the experience which you've seen with multiple customers, over the years, what's the one thing which you would, what you would advise, which would be applicable to, let's say, majority of the cloud customers? In your experience, what is the one thing which they should always think of before making changes in their cloud environment?
It's interesting that Stu picked that one for advertising for this webinar, but it's really, and no advertisement here, back up before you do anything. It's so important. I used to work as an administrator, and I was always afraid when there was no backup in place. So that's really the one thing that, for me personally, it was the thing that gave me a lot of confidence to do stuff, knowing that there's something that you can go back. And now with configuration management in place, having that feature implemented, so it's like you have both. You don't need to touch a production instance. You can do deployments from a sandbox environment to a production environment, and you can do a backup. That's a great starting point. And then you can start building your business processes, right? You can start with, on the one hand, it's a first work stream. Think about your communication and how you approach your stakeholders, and then how you deal with the changes you get, right? So understand the change, prioritize it. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Although I wasn't expecting you to talk about backups, but thank you for sharing your experience.
And from me, Jan, thank you so much for investing your time in our audience. I really appreciate it, as always. And thank you for those of you who are watching, and of course the people who are watching on recording. We appreciate you too. We will have, when we publish this video, we'll put Jan's details so that you can contact directly. When we email out the recording as a follow-up to this webinar, so keep an eye on your inboxes and in your junk mail folders. For that email, you'll have Jan's details if you ever need to reach out to him. And also we'll be sending a best practices guide through via email, so keep an eye on your inboxes. So again, that's thanks for me, Stu from Revise. Thank you, Vish, for your insight and your time in the middle of the morning and the night in the States. And again, Jan, thanks for sharing all of your expertise with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a great webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.